Hello, neighbors. So we are on this video to talk through Tepache. A lot of people know what it is. A lot of people don't know what it is. Tepache is the fermented pineapple drink where that is very handy to do because as long as you're using organic pineapples, you use the skins. The skins are primarily where the fermentation agents are, where the yeasts are, and so forth. And so they have lots of wild yeast on them. And of course, we all know that when you're cutting up a pineapple, it feels like there's a lot of waste there. But the rind, although it's not chewable for humans, most of us, it does have a lot of other great qualities to it in terms of prebiotic and probiotic health. So, and it has things in it that help you to process protein better, to make better use of protein, etc. I am not a doctor. I'm sharing my experience with you. You should not take anything that I have say as medical advice. But with that said, let's get to Tepache. So I'm going to show you kind of where I am in process. As you know, this channel is meant to be messy. It's meant to be for like real people who do other things with their time than edit videos. So, but also it's also a place for us who are on the internet trying to learn things, but who, after a while you see 5 recipes, they all kind of sound the same. You see 10 videos, they all kind of are saying the same thing. And then you try it at your house and it doesn't really work that way. We're trying to identify what those pieces are that are different than what people are, editing through and showing you the final shiny product, so that you don't feel like a mess when you're doing it. So what I've got here is, this is the end of my Tepache, but I'll show you all the parts to the process here in a minute. This is the end of the Tepache stuff that you put in there. So these are the solids. You see pineapple rind here. A few days in, because I had a smaller pineapple and I only had 1 rind to work with, I went ahead and added the fruit, only because it was kind of not a super ripe pineapple. And for some reason, it wasn't really ripening. Usually as soon as you cut them, they super ripen fast and they're very edible, but you got to eat them fast. And this was like the opposite. So I had it sitting for 3 days. It never really ripened. But I know that there are good enzymes in there. And so I thought, well, why not add that to the Tepache? The other thing that I added a few days in was some pear. So this smushy stuff here that you see is pear. And I'm about to make some fermented pear wine anyway, because I have a lot of pears. So I thought, since I have some, and you want to make sure you leave all the skins on, because you're looking for the action of the yeasts that live on the skin. So don't wash it. Don't do anything. Obviously, you need to be using organic produce. Way better if you're using organic produce from a store that only carries organics. Because if you're going to a store that has mostly conventional, but like a few organic things or even a whole section of both, in the distribution process and in the storage process, you're going to get cross-contamination of whatever's sitting on the conventional leftover from sprays and so forth. So because fermentation amplifies kind of the chemical qualities that are already in a food, you don't want pesticide amplified, probably. If you do, I guess that's a whole nother channel you should start on YouTube. So anyway, but what you also see in here are raisins. I bought some raisins that I was hoping would be special. I'm not experiencing them being special yet, but maybe that day will come. These are dark raisins. They're actually raw raisins that are sun-dried, so not usual raisins like a sun-made raisin or something are put into very hot ovens, so anything on them is killed. The yeast would be killed. Anything alive on them would be dead by the time you got it. I wanted some that were alive. So I ordered some off of Etsy that were, pricey. They're Syrah grapes that are sun-dried, and then they send them to people. So I thought that they would have kind of a deep flavor, that they would have maybe a little bit different flavor than I was used to in a raisin. And I've made my own raisins before, And they really did have quite a distinctive texture, feel, flavor to them. And these really don't. So I don't know what the deal is. I'm holding off judgment of them because I have talked to the farmer and he knows what's up. And so he's like really knowledgeable. And so I feel like I'm missing something here, that there's probably something where this might work later. So I'll keep you apprised. But anyway, that's pretty much all that's in here. So it's a whole pineapple, more or less, just about a whole pineapple, everything except the leaves. I can't find anything online that teaches me what to do with the leaves. And since this was my first one, I wanted to make sure that I could get the process down first, and not add a wild card to the situation. So once I get this down a few ways, I'm going to add the leaves because I don't want to throw those out either. But what I can smell right now, it's a little bit sour. It's a little bit alcohol-y. And what you put in this mix, and I'll show you what this mix looks like. Where's my other container of it? Here we go. I've bottled some of it, and I'll show you how I do that in a minute. It looks like this. But what I did is I used one cylinder of piloncillo, one pyramid of piloncillo, which is a raw sugar. You can see it's very dark. It contains all the molasses that it would from the sugar cane. So it's kind of barely crystallized. Yum. The recipes that I used said that after 2 days, you should bottle it. When I tasted it after 2-ish days, I usually give it a little bit more time because it's cold in here. It tasted like it was on its way to turning into rum. It tasted like a watered down rum. I'm not exactly looking for rum. I wanted kind of a fruitier flavor. And so I added a little more white sugar. And by white sugar, I don't mean the white sugar you think I mean. I mean evaporated organic cane sugar, which is kind of a blonde color. I added a little bit more of that. So I ended up with about probably 50% more sugar in there than most of the recipes say. But the recipes kind of vary too. Like some of them call for 2 quarts of water. Some of them call for a gallon of water, even though they all call for 1 cup of sugar. And this piloncillo pyramid of sugar is basically 8 ounces anyway. It's a cup. So I did one of those. You want to make sure that you get it in water that's hot enough to dissolve it. So I put it on the stove, got the water just to where it was beating up. Water, was beating up on the lid. And then I removed it from the heat, put the sugar in there and stirred it. And the reason I don't want to get the water hotter than that is because in a raw sugar, there are enzymes and there are prebiotics and there are good things in there. And when it stays intact, you can process the sugar better. There's much less chance of getting a sugar high because you have all of those other things in there. A sugar high is really just what happens when you're only getting the calorie, but you're not getting any of the nutrition that goes along with the calorie. So anyway, that gets us to the recipe point. I filled up this large pot that I'll show you that is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like 5 quarts at kind of almost the rim, at like sort of sketchy close to the rim. So this is the pan I used. I started it in a different container in like a jar, but there's a lot of bulk when you're making tepache, right? Like you've got all this fruit in there. And so I found this to be just more manageable. You want to make sure it's a steel pot if you're going to do it in something that's not glass. It can't be aluminum. You shouldn't really have any aluminum in your house at all because it particulates at any change in temperature. And if it particulates, that means you're going to breathe it over time, even if you're not eating from it, which of course you are eating from it in a pan. It does react, especially with like a tomato product, any kind of acidity, and you're creating acid products when you're fermenting things. And so, it's tricky business. You want to not die. So I'm going to get a spoon here. I'm going to show you what it looks like. Again, the smell that I'm getting right now, it's kind of sour. It's a little alcohol-y. It's not something that I find particularly appealing at this stage. Okay. So I'm going to show you the next steps that I'm doing here. Okay, so this is what it looks like again. And then what I've done is I've put it into 4 containers that are not quite a quart, or not quite a liter each, not quite a quart anyway. With my trusty funnel. I do have a plastic funnel. It's just kind of what I have. I make sure to not put anything hot through it, which is something, but in a special world, I'll have a different funnel. I also use this little strainer. Frankly, I've talked about these before. These are strainers that are actually set up as like drain strainers for your sinks. I find them incredibly helpful when I'm dealing in funnels, or just when I'm doing like a quick strain of kombucha like into its second fermentation container. So, but what I've also done here is added some honey because I like sort of the body of honey, but also because when you're fermenting, honey has a special ability to ferment and turn into its own very fizzy, very like silky alcohol. And since Tepache is designed to be a little bit alcoholic, although you could take it before that, or you could take it and then heat it up and burn that off. That would be fine too. But then you won't get the prebiotics kind of goodness of it once you heat it up. So, so this is what we end up with. I mean, several of these. But what I've done in these, you can see there's something at the bottom here. There's raisins at the bottom here. I have some Perrier bottles, some like large Perrier bottles that also are full. They also have raisins in them, just kind of a layer at the bottom, one or two raisins high. Okay, full layer. And then honey, more honey, because if I had bottled this a couple of days ago, when it was just like kind of the light rum with a hint of sugar still in it, I probably wouldn't add the honey now. But I really wanted a deeper flavor than I was getting to, and less of a rum flavor, a little more of a fermenty flavor. And so I like where this is at, but it's not really drinkable to my taste right now. So what I've done, I've added the honey, about 1/3 of a cup to each container, a little bit more to this one that says extra sweet, a little bit less to these guys. And I fill them up about this high, you can see, that's the total. And then you shake them up real good because you got all this honey hanging around in the bottom. You want to get that into the water, into the liquid part, because honey is water soluble, but not when it's cold. Obviously, it seizes up when it's cold. And you want to kind of get that going. You want to get it in there. So then